the ending?
No, obviously it's a big upset. As usual, I didn't guess the opening. Okay, I mean, as this anti-Moscow gambit, I have guessed obviously, but the variation again it caught me by surprise. But I remembered this line that it's supposed to give white a bit better endgame, so I went for it, and I think Vichy really had to play bishop takes d6 instead of rook e8. Just take on d6, rook take d6, king e7, rook take h6, and now either knight e5 or knight f6. And he has some compensation for the pawn, because after he played king e8, after my move a3, he has a very difficult endgame. And I don't know, because obviously I had some other opportunities, he had some other opportunities. For example, instead of knight g6, he could go immediately rook a6, rook a2, rook c6, rook c2, knight e6, rook takes c3, take, knight f4, g3, knight g3 check, and we get knight endgame. I think it should be drawish, but I also keep some chances for a win here. And in fact, knight g6 doesn't have too much sense, because I still could go for this endgame by playing rook c2 instead of king c2. It would be just exactly the same position. And I think maybe instead of knight takes c3, I had king b3, knight d5, rook c2, and maybe I'm winning. Actually, it's probably the only point in the game when I was winning, because rook endgame I believe is drawish, although it's still very difficult for black, and maybe it's winning for white, but I believe it's more drawish. And also definitely Vichy just blundered my move rook c2, which led me to get my rook out of the corner, out of a2 square. And in fact, I mean, any normal human, after blundering such a thing, he would get a completely lost position. But Vichy, he is special, and it was still drawish, which is probably the biggest upset of the game for me.
Well, basically, I think he played very well, because I was the one who surprised him in the opening. And perhaps I was a bit careless with king e8. Somehow I saw a3, but I was probably I should have been more alert here and just taken in king e7 and worked a little bit and found the draw. But I felt okay, I can probably draw like this as well. And afterwards, I blundered in the rook ending. But the funny thing is, I might not have lost anything any time at all, because even if I had gone correctly to f6, he would have gone to e3, checked on f3, and we would have exactly the same position as in the game. So it's funny that you can blunder something and still sort of end up in the exact same situation. I don't know if it's a draw, but I remembered, I think once I drew with Vladi also in Monaco like this. You keep attacking one pawn on the queen side, one on the king side, back and forth. And it's a typical idea in rook endings, and it seemed to hold this time. Well, basically the question was, how do you recover after a move like rook, king c8? And for some reason I thought it is enough if I keep hanging on to his king, and I completely missed this rook c2 idea. But anyway, the funny thing is, I can't stop his rook getting to f3, whether it comes via c3, whether it comes via e3, so perhaps I didn't spoil anything really. Okay, my king could go to g7 right away, which might be helpful, but I didn't see a clear win for him, I didn't see a clear draw for me, but okay, somehow it was enough. And okay, I think it's also difficult to play a tournament without one bad day, and for me today, that was the day that I really chose to play some lousy moves, but at least not enough. So.
I know you think you played badly today, although your opponent earlier said that at least in regard to the final rook ending, that a normal person, he said, would have lost, and that it implied that there was some superhuman quality almost. But I wonder, my question really is, how were your nerves during this game?
Look, I don't really know. I mean, clearly, this moment of carelessness, King E8, instead of something more direct and specific, it happens sometimes. Why you do it, I don't really know. But no, at least after move 40, when I realized I'd blundered, then I managed to calm down, and I realized I had not spoiled anything. It's probably this was the most important moment. Just to realize that nothing has actually changed. Like I said, it's funny that you blunder, but in fact, it has no real consequences. And okay, I think Rishuk is being a bit kind.
Okay, more questions? At what point of the game did you feel that you have a draw in your hand?
Well, when I played f5, I knew that. Because even if he doesn't take on f5, I'll go h5 myself, and one of the pawns will move. Or fg4 and king f5. So when I played f5, I thought...
But before that, it was iffy for you in your mind, or?
Yes. I mean, it's impossible to be sure, but no, already when my king is on g6, his king is on e4, and I'm attacking the f and a pawns, I had the feeling it was a draw, but when I played f5, I was sure already.
I have a question. I know it's very, very difficult sometimes to control your emotions and forget that you're playing an important game in a world championship. How do you manage to not to think about, or do you manage to cut it out that it's an important game in a world championship?
Well, you try your best, but I mean, around about the time control I was making, I mean, a5, a4, rook b3, I could have spent a bit more time. In fact, he suggested the right plan right away. I should go rook f3 and try from there. Still, it's unpleasant, but no, nothing like what it was in the game. And, okay, sometimes you need a little bit of luck as well. I mean, I'm really lucky that this position with the king on c4 and rook on d3 and f4. Normally, you know that once the base pawns are protected, there is nothing you can do. You lose all rook endings. Except that here he can't, his base pawn, either his rook is vulnerable on third rank, or there's a pawn on the second rank protecting his rook, and he can't have both. It's funny that we end up in such a position. Clearly it was not something I aimed for. So, I mean, the answer is you try, but you don't succeed.
So did you follow, for example, the Galf and Kramnik game during your game?
Well, but they finished pretty fast, so for most of the time we were alone.
So you're able to cut out those thoughts that, oh my God, I hope I don't lose this because I may not win by any chance the championship, or you don't think about that during the game?
Well, once you get to this position, it's better not to think anything. So. No, it's better because you're not really in control of anything, so it's better just to...
You're able to focus on the problem on the board?
Not even. I just tried not to think about anything. So.
Regarding this question, how well do you sleep when you feel so close to be world champion but not yet?
It's been okay. I mean, last night I slept much better than a couple of nights ago. Actually, between rounds 5 and 7, I was not able to sleep very well, but now I'm okay. So it's working now.
What do you think about this document? Is necessary?
No, not really. I mean, especially when a computer move can, any computer help is 1,000 times more valuable. Why would you spend months doping?
In the end game, how many moves do you have to take?
Actually, I don't know. I mean, this is probably the difference between computers and humans. You don't calculate. You just have to imagine what position you're aiming for. So I knew that what I'm aiming for, the best case scenario, is when I lose the a4 pawn to win either the f or the h pawns, and then keep undermining. So play rook a3 so that both pawns are controlled, a4 and f3. And when he goes rook f4, then always king g5, and rook f5, king back to g6. And if a5, in the hypothetical situation that a5 would have been possible, I mean, where it wasn't, then h5, exactly when his rook is there, rook takes h5, rook takes f3, and then the g-pawn he cannot hold it in the long term while queening his thing, and then you have to calculate a raise. But only when you get to that stage, otherwise you just think in concepts.